I woke up at 2 a.m. to a silence that screamed. My wife, Sophia, was gone. Her wedding ring gleamed on the table, the only trace she had ever been mine. Jake Thompson, a 35-year-old programmer from Portland, had no idea that this night would tear his life into before and after. Will he have the strength to uncover the truth when his entire world is built on lies? The rain was relentless that March evening in Portland, Oregon, hammering the city like it had a personal vendetta. Jake Thompson, 35, sat in his cubicle at a buzzing tech startup in the Pearl District, his fingers flying over the keyboard. As a software engineer, Jake lived for the clean logic of code. Every line had a purpose, every bug a solution. It was a world where rules mattered, and he thrived in it. Outside, the city drowned in a gray haze, but inside, Jake was wrapping up a project, his mind already drifting to home. Home was a cozy craftsman bungalow in Laurelhurst, where Jake lived with his wife, Sophia, 34, a marketing manager at a rising startup. They'd been married for 12 years, and Jake still felt a quiet pride when he thought of their life together. Their evenings were a comfortable rhythm, cooking pasta with store-bought sauce, sipping cheap Merlot, and laughing over reruns of The Office. On weekends, they'd leash up their Labrador, Max, and hike the trails of Forest Park, Sophia's chestnut hair catching the sunlight as she teased Jake about his terrible sense of direction. She was the spark in every room, her energy pulling people in like gravity. Jake loved her for it, loved how she made the ordinary feel like a gift. Their marriage wasn't perfect. No marriage is. Lately, Sophia had been distracted, her eyes glued to her phone, her laughs a little forced. Jake chalked it up to her new role at work. She'd been promoted to lead a big campaign, and the late nights were piling up. It's just a phase, he told himself, ignoring the faint unease in his chest. He trusted her. Trust was the foundation of their life, wasn't it? 12 years of shared memories, first dates at food carts, a rainy wedding in a vineyard, the time they adopted Max on a whim, had built something solid. Or so he thought. That evening, Jake's team hit a milestone, and his boss gave them a rare early dismissal. He glanced at the clock. 5:15 p.m. A grin spread across his face. He could surprise Sophia, maybe grab takeout from their favorite Thai place, and beat her home for once. He shot her a text. Done early. Want a ride? No reply. Not unusual. Sophia's end-of-day hustle often left her phone buried in her bag. Jake shrugged, grabbed his jacket, and headed to his car, the rain soaking his sneakers as he jogged across the lot. Portland's traffic was a nightmare, but Jake didn't mind. He cranked the radio, some indie band Sophia loved, and drove toward her office downtown. Her building was a sleek glass tower, all sharp angles and glowing lights, a stark contrast to the city's gritty charm. As he pulled up to the curb, the rain blurred his windshield, the wipers fighting a losing battle. He squinted through the haze, scanning the lobby. There she was, Sophia, her silhouette unmistakable, chatting with someone. Her boss, Eric, a 40-something exec with a polished smile and a reputation for charm. Jake's hand hovered over the horn, ready to wave her over, but something stopped him. Sophia was laughing, her head tilted back, her hand brushing Eric's arm. It was a small gesture, but it hit Jake like a static shock. She looked alive, in a way he hadn't seen in months. Before he could process it, she grabbed her coat, darted out into the rain, and made a beeline for a black SUV parked at the curb. Eric jogged ahead, opening the passenger door for her. Sophia slid inside, her bag slung over her shoulder, and the car pulled away, taillights vanishing into the storm. Jake sat frozen, his engine idling. Sophia never took rides from coworkers. She'd always been adamant about keeping work and personal life separate, once turning down a colleague's offer with a laugh. I'd rather walk in a monsoon than blur those lines. So why Eric? Why now? The rain pounded the roof of his car, each drop amplifying the questions in his head. He thought about calling her, texting, anything, but his phone stayed in his pocket. Instead, he drove home, the unease in his chest growing heavier with every mile. By the time he pulled into their driveway, the clock read 6:30 p.m. The bungalow was dark, Max greeting him with a lazy tail wag. Jake flicked on the lights, tossed his keys on the counter, and tried to shake the image of Sophia in that SUV. He was being paranoid, right? It was just a ride. Portland rain could drown a saint. Maybe she just didn't want to wait for an Uber. He busied himself in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, but his mind kept replaying the scene. Her laugh, Eric's hand on the door, the way she hadn't even glanced back. The front door creaked open at 7 p.m. Sophia stepped inside, her hair damp, her coat dripping. She was humming a tune Jake didn't recognize, her keys jingling as she kicked off her boots. "Oh, hey," she said, spotting him. "You're home early." Traffic must have been brutal. Her smile was bright, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, got lucky," Jake said, his voice tighter than he meant. He stirred the pot on the stove, avoiding her gaze. "I swung by your office, actually. Thought I'd surprise you." A beat of silence. Sophia's smile faltered just for a second. "Oh, really? I didn't see you." She hung her coat, her movements deliberate. "Eric gave me a lift. You know how bad the rain was. Didn't want to drown waiting for a cab." Jake nodded, his grip on the spoon tightening. "Didn't see you call a cab, though. You always say you hate riding with coworkers." She laughed, a little too high, a little too quick. "Desperate times, you know." It was pouring, and he was headed this way. She crossed to the fridge, pulling out a bottle of wine. "You're not jealous, are you?" Her tone was playful, but there was an edge to it, like a warning. "Nah," Jake said, forcing a smile. "Just not like you, that's all." He turned back to the stove, his heart thudding. The conversation shifted to small talk. Her day, his project, what Max had chewed up this time. But the air felt different, charged with something unspoken. Sophia poured herself a glass of wine, her phone lighting up with a text. She glanced at it, her lips twitching into a smile, and flipped the screen face down. Jake watched her from the corner of his eye, the unease now a full-blown ache. He wanted to ask who was what was so funny, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he plated the food, and they ate in the glow of the kitchen lights, the rain still tapping against the windows. Sophia chatted about work, her voice bright, but her eyes kept drifting to her phone. Jake nodded along, his mind elsewhere, replaying that moment at the curb. That night, as they climbed into bed, Jake stared at the ceiling, the rain a steady drumbeat outside. Sophia fell asleep quickly, her breathing soft, her phone glowing faintly on her nightstand. He tried to push the thoughts away. Eric, the SUV, her smile, but they clung like damp clothes. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was reading too much into it. But as he lay there, the rules of their life, the trust, the routines, the love he'd never questioned, felt just a little less certain. And once you notice a crack, it's impossible to look away. The Portland rain hadn't let up for days, turning the city into a sodden maze of reflections and headlights. Jake Thompson, 35, sat at the kitchen table in their Laurelhurst bungalow, the faint hum of the dishwasher filling the silence. It was a week since he'd seen Sophia climb into her boss Eric's SUV outside her downtown office, her laugh echoing in his mind like a glitch he couldn't debug. That moment had lodged itself in his chest, a quiet alarm that wouldn't shut off. He'd tried to dismiss it. Sophia's explanation about the rain and needing a ride made sense, didn't it? But the unease clung to him, heavy as the damp air. Jake's life as a software engineer was built on logic. At his tech startup in the Pearl District, he spent his days untangling code, finding patterns in chaos. He'd always believed his marriage to Sophia, 34, operated on similar rules: trust, routine, love. 12 years together had woven a tapestry of memories. Late-night talks over Thai takeout, hiking with their Labrador, Max, in Forest Park, her teasing him about his terrible coffee-making skills. But now, those memories felt like code with a hidden bug, one he couldn't quite pinpoint. Sophia's behavior had shifted in subtle ways. She was still the vibrant woman who could charm a room, but her energy felt redirected. She'd linger over her phone, her thumbs dancing across the screen, a faint smile tugging at her lips. When Jake asked who she was texting, she'd shrug, just work stuff, and flip the phone face down. Her late nights at the office were piling up, each one accompanied by a breezy text. Big meeting, don't wait up. Jake had always trusted her, but trust, he was starting to realize, was fragile when questions went unanswered. That Thursday evening, the rain hammering the windows, Jake decided to surprise Sophia again. His team had wrapped another sprint, and he left work early, the clock barely hitting 5 p.m. He texted her, "Grab you from the office?" No reply. He drove downtown anyway, the wipers slapping rhythmically against the windshield. Her glass-towered office loomed ahead, its lights cutting through the storm. Jake parked across the street, his breath fogging the window as he scanned the lobby. There she was, Sophia, in a navy coat, her hair catching the fluorescent glow. She was talking to Eric again, their heads close, her hand gesturing animatedly. Jake's stomach twisted. He wasn't the jealous type, never had been, but something about Eric's easy confidence, the way Sophia leaned into him, felt like a violation of an unspoken rule. Before he could decide whether to get out, Sophia grabbed her bag and darted outside, Eric trailing her. They ducked into his black SUV, the same one from last week, and peeled away into the rain. Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His pulse thumped in his ears, drowning out the radio. Why was she with Eric again? She'd always been so firm about boundaries, once joking she'd rather slog through a downpour than let work bleed into her personal life. He thought about following them, just for a second, but the idea made him feel small, like he was betraying her by doubting her. Instead, he drove home, the city blurring past, his mind a tangle of questions. By 7:30 p.m., Jake was in the kitchen, Max sprawled at his feet, the smell of garlic and onions filling the air as he stirred a pan. The front door clicked open, and Sophia stepped inside, shaking rain from her coat. "God, it's a mess out there," she said, her voice bright but strained. She kicked off her boots, her eyes flicking to Jake. "You're cooking? Smells amazing." "Got off early," Jake said, keeping his tone casual. He chopped a pepper, the knife's rhythm steadying him. "Went by your office to pick you up. Saw you leaving with Eric." Sophia froze for a split second, her coat halfway hung. "Oh, yeah," she said, recovering with a laugh. He offered a ride again. "I wasn't about to wait for an Uber in that storm." She crossed to the fridge, pulling out a bottle of wine. "You didn't sit out there long, did you? You should have texted." "I did," Jake said, his voice quieter than he meant. "You didn't answer." Her smile tightened. "Phone must have been buried in my bag. Work's been nuts." She poured a glass of wine, her movements quick, deliberate. "You're not, worried, are you?" Her tone was teasing, but there was a challenge in her eyes, daring him to push. Jake forced a chuckle, hating how it sounded. "Nah, just noticed. You usually hate rides with coworkers." "Desperate times," she said, waving a hand. "Eric's harmless. Lives near us anyway." She sipped her wine, her phone buzzing on the counter. She glanced at it, a quick private smile, and flipped it over. "So what for dinner?" They ate at the table, Max snoring nearby, the conversation drifting to safe topics. Jake's project, Sophia's latest campaign. But the air felt charged, like a circuit about to short. Sophia's phone lit up again, and she ignored it, her fingers tapping the table. Jake's eyes kept drifting to the screen, catching a glimpse of an emoji, a flame, and a heart. No name. His chest tightened. "Who's that?" he asked, aiming for casual. "Just a coworker," she said too fast. Work group chats blowing up. She stood, clearing her plate. "I'm beat. Gonna shower." Jake nodded, his food untouched. As she disappeared upstairs, the water hissing on, he sat there, the emoji burned into his mind. He wasn't crazy, was he? Sophia had always shared her phone, playlists, memes, dumb work emails. Now it was a fortress, flipped over whenever he was near. He thought about checking it, just for a second, but guilt stopped him. That wasn't who he was. Not yet. The next few days were a slow unraveling. Sophia's late nights grew frequent, her texts vaguer. "Team drinks, be home soon." She'd come back smelling faintly of perfume Jake didn't recognize, her eyes bright but distant. One night, she came home with a new scarf, silk and expensive. "Team giveaway," she said, shrugging. "Eric's wife works in fashion." Jake nodded, but the math didn't add up. Since when did startups hand out designer scarves? He started noticing other things. Sophia locked her phone now, a new habit. She'd take calls in the other room, her voice low, cutting off when Jake entered. Once, he caught her whispering on the porch, her phone glowing in the dark. "Just work," she said when he asked, brushing past him. But her eyes didn't meet his. By Friday, Jake was fraying. At work, he stared at his code, the lines blurring. He kept replaying that SUV, Eric's hand on the door, Sophia's laugh. Trust was the bedrock of their marriage, but it was cracking under the weight of too many unanswered questions. That night, as they watched a movie, Sophia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a smile flickering, and set it face down. "Work thing," she muttered. Jake's eyes caught the screen before it dimmed. An emoji again, that damn flame and heart. "Who's that?" he asked, his voice sharper than intended. Sophia's smile vanished. "God, Jake, it's just work. Why are you so paranoid?" She stood, grabbing her phone. "I'm going to bed." As she walked away, Jake sat frozen, the movie droning on. The rules of their life, the ones he'd trusted for 12 years, were bending, maybe breaking. And for the first time, he wondered if the woman he loved was still the person he knew. The Portland rain had become a constant, a gray curtain that seemed to trap Jake Thompson's thoughts in a loop. It was mid-March, and the cracks in his 12-year marriage to Sophia were widening, each new doubt a chisel chipping away at the trust he'd once held sacred. Jake, 35, a software engineer with a knack for solving puzzles, was losing his grip on the one puzzle he couldn't debug, his wife. The image of Sophia sliding into her boss Eric's black SUV haunted him. Twice now, her laugh too bright, her excuses too smooth. The flamin' heart emoji on her phone, the lock screen, the late nights, they were all pieces, but the picture they formed was one Jake wasn't ready to face. At their Laurelhurst bungalow, life marched on, a facade of normalcy. Jake cooked dinners, walked their Labrador, Max, and smiled through Sophia's stories about work. But every glance at her phone, every vague team meeting text, felt like a pinprick. Sophia, 34, was still the woman who could light up a room, but her warmth felt distant, reserved for someone else. Jake's logical mind screamed for evidence, but his heart clung to denial. Maybe it was stress. Maybe he was paranoid. Maybe love was enough to bridge the gap. The unraveling accelerated on a stormy Tuesday night. Jake was at his desk in their home office, debugging code, when Sophia breezed in, her coat already on. "Heading out for a quick run," she said, lacing up sneakers she'd barely worn before. Jake blinked. A run? Sophia had always joked she'd only jog if chased by a bear. "Since when do you run?" he asked, half teasing, half curious. "Work's been intense," she said, avoiding his eyes. "Clears my head." She grabbed her phone and was out the door before he could reply, the rain swallowing her silhouette. Jake stared after her, the unease in his chest, now a steady drumbeat. He tried to focus on his laptop, but his mind wandered. 40 minutes later, Sophia returned, cheeks flushed, hair damp, her phone glowing as she scrolled. "Good run?" he asked. "Great," she said, too quickly, and vanished into the shower. The lock clicked, a new habit. Jake stood outside the bathroom, the hiss of water mocking him. Why lock the door? Why run in a downpour? He shook his head, hating the person he was becoming, suspicious, small, spying on his own wife. The next day, at his Pearl District startup, Jake's focus was shot. His code wouldn't compile, his thoughts stuck on Sophia's locked phone, her sudden fitness kick. During lunch, he overheard coworkers joking about team giveaways at their own jobs. Cheap mugs, not the silk scarf Sophia had brought home, claiming it was from Eric's fashion-connected wife. The math didn't add up. That evening, he tried to talk to her, keeping it light. "So, Eric's wife's in fashion? That scarf's fancy for a giveaway." Sophia's fork paused midair. "Yeah, she gets discounts," she said, her voice clipped. "Why are you so curious?" She laughed, but it was sharp a warning. Jake dropped it, his stomach twisting. The breaking point came that Friday, after another late night. Sophia had texted, "Team drinks, home soon." Jake waited, Max snoring beside him, the clock ticking past 11 p.m. When she finally walked in, her perfume was unfamiliar, her eyes glassy. "Fun night?" he asked, his voice neutral. "Exhausting," she said, kicking off her heels. Her phone buzzed, and she snatched it up, a smile flickering before she tucked it away. Jake's patience snapped. "Who's texting you at midnight?" Her eyes narrowed. "God, Jake, it's just work. You're acting like I'm hiding something." She stormed upstairs, leaving him in the dark living room, her words ringing hollow. The next morning, Jake woke to an empty bed. It was 2 a.m., the rain a steady roar. Sophia's side was cold, her pillow untouched. Her sneakers were gone, but her gym bag sat by the door. Panic clawed at him. He called her phone, straight to voicemail. "Soph, it's me. Where are you? Call me." He paced the bungalow, Max trailing him, the silence suffocating. At 5 a.m., a text pinged, "At my sister's. Need space. Talk later." Her sister lived 2 hours away in Salem. Why now? Why no call? Jake's hand shook as he opened their shared banking app, desperate for answers. His breath caught. A charge from last night. $450 for a room at the Sentinel, a luxury hotel downtown. No conference, no work event. Just a room, booked under their joint account. His vision blurred. He opened their cloud photo gallery, a habit from happier times when they'd share snapshots. A new image loaded, time-stamped 1 a.m. Sophia in a sleek black dress, standing by a hotel window, city lights behind her. Eric's arms were around her waist, their smiles intimate, unmistakable. The truth hit like a physical blow. As if on cue, his phone chimed, an anonymous email, no sender name. Attached was a hotel receipt matching the charge and an audio clip. Jake pressed play, his heart pounding. Sophia's voice, low and urgent. "Jake won't find out if we're careful, Eric." The clip cut off. He replayed it. Each were a knife. Who sent this? A co-worker? Arriba? It didn't matter. The evidence was undeniable, the betrayal complete. Jake sank onto the couch, the room spinning. 12 years, shared dreams, laughter, promises, reduced to a photo and a whispered lie. He wanted to scream, to confront her, but rage gave way to a colder realization. This wasn't just infidelity. The hotel, the secrecy, the audio, it felt calculated, like Sophia was playing a game he hadn't known he was in. He checked the banking app again, scrolling back. Small transfers, $500 here, $1,000 there, had been siphoned to an account he didn't recognize, all under his digital signature. His name, his trust, weaponized against him. The rain battered the windows, but Jake barely heard it. He thought of their first dance at their vineyard wedding, Sophia's laugh as they stumbled through the steps. That woman felt like a stranger now. He wasn't just losing his wife. He was losing the life he believed in. The rules had changed, and he was the last to know. As dawn broke, gray and unforgiving, Jake made a choice. He wouldn't confront her yet. He'd gather proof, protect himself, and find out how deep this betrayal ran. The logical part of him, the engineer, was still there demanding order. But the man in him was breaking, and he didn't know how long he could hold both together. The Portland rain had turned into a relentless drizzle, mirroring the fog in Jake Thompson's mind. It was late March, and the 35-year-old software engineer sat in a dimly lit motel room on the edge of town, the neon sign outside buzzing like his thoughts. The photo of Sophia in Eric's arms, the hotel receipt, the audio clip of her voice. "Jake won't find out if we're careful," Eric, had shattered the illusion of his 12-year marriage. Worse, the discovery of $20,000 siphoned from their joint account, funneled through transfers bearing his digital signature, wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Jake's world, once built on logic and trust, was in ruins. But in the wreckage, a new resolve was forming. He wasn't a victim. He was a problem solver, and this problem needed solving. The motel's scratchy sheets and stale coffee smell were a far cry from the Laurelhurst bungalow Jake had called home. He'd left the night he found the photo, packing a duffel bag with clothes, his laptop, and a toothbrush. No note, no text to Sophia. He needed space to think, to breathe, away from the echoes of her lies. Max, their Labrador, was with a neighbor, a temporary fix. Jake's phone stayed off, except for one call to his oldest friend, Mike, a lawyer who'd seen him through college breakups and bad contracts. "I need help," Jake had said, his voice raw. "Sophia, she's not who I thought." Mike met him at a diner the next morning, rain streaking the windows. Over greasy hash browns, Jake spilled it all. The SUV rides, the locked phone, the hotel, the money, the anonymous email with the damning audio. Mike's face darkened. "This isn't just cheating, Jake. Using your signature on those transfers? That's fraud. She's tangled you in something bigger." He leaned forward, voice low. "You need to protect yourself. Get proof. Hire a lawyer, and don't confront her until you're ready. She's playing dirty." Jake nodded, the words sinking in. Confronting Sophia now would be like debugging code without seeing the full script. Messy and pointless. He'd always been methodical, a man who fixed bugs by tracing their roots. This was no different, even if it hurt like hell. Back at the motel, he opened his laptop and dug deeper. The banking app showed more transfers, small but consistent, stretching back months. Each one was linked to an account he didn't recognize, but his digital signature, tied to their shared financial software, was stamped on every transaction. Sophia had access to his login. They'd never hidden passwords. Trust, it turned out, was a perfect backdoor. He cross-referenced the hotel charge. $450 for one night at the Sentinel, no business purpose. Then he opened the anonymous email again, replaying the audio. Sophia's voice was a blade, but the sender's identity gnawed at him. A coworker? A rival of Eric's? The email was a dead end, routed through a generic service. Jake saved it anyway, along with screenshots of the transfers, the photo, the receipt. Evidence was his lifeline now. Mike connected him with a lawyer, Sarah, a sharp woman with a no-nonsense vibe. In her downtown office, rain pattering against the windows, Jake laid out the facts. Sarah's pen flew across her notepad. "This is serious," she said. "The financial activity suggests Sophie is either covering for someone or running her own scheme. Your signature on those documents could implicate you if this blows up. We need to trace the money and clear your name." She paused, softening. "I know this is personal, but you're doing the right thing by staying calm." Calm was a stretch. Jake's nights were sleepless, haunted by memories of Sophia. Their first kiss at a Portland food cart, her laugh when Max stole a sandwich, their wedding dance under string lights. Those images clashed with the new Sophia. Secretive, calculating, a stranger wearing his wife's face. He started seeing a therapist, recommended by Mike. Dr. Ellis, a quiet man with wire-rimmed glasses, listened as Jake poured out his anger, his guilt, his fear. "You're not crazy for doubting her," Dr. Ellis said. "But don't let this define you. You're not the victim here. You're the one choosing what comes next." Those words lit a spark. Jake wasn't powerless. He was a man who fixed things, and he'd fix this, not with rage, but with precision. Sarah's team dug into Sophia's company, a startup with a flashy reputation but whispers of shady deals. They found records linking Eric, Sophia's boss, to questionable financial moves, offshore accounts, inflated invoices. Sophia's name appeared on several documents, but so did Jake's, forged onto approvals he'd never seen. The realization hit hard. She hadn't just betrayed him emotionally. She'd used him as a shield, a fall guy for her and Eric's schemes. Jake's anger surged, a hot pulse in his veins. He imagined posting the photo online, exposing Sophia and Eric to their colleagues, their friends. The thought was intoxicating, revenge in a few clicks. But he stopped himself. That wasn't him. He wouldn't stoop to their level, wouldn't let their lies turn him into someone he didn't recognize. Instead, he channeled his energy into the legal fight. He met with Sarah weekly, handing over every scrap of evidence, bank statements, digital logs, the anonymous email. He worked late, reconstructing Timeline's perspective, pulling metadata from Sophia's phone records, proving she'd accessed his accounts. Each step was methodical, a code he was rewriting line by line. One night, alone in the motel, Jake stared at the ceiling, the neon signs hum filling the silence. He thought about confronting Sophia, demanding answers, but Sarah's advice echoed. Wait. Build your case. He pictured her face, the way she'd gaslit him. "You're acting like I'm hiding something," and felt a new emotion, determination. He wasn't just fighting for his name or his money. He was fighting for the truth, for the life he deserved. The breakthrough came in early April. Sarah's team traced the mystery account to a shell company tied to Eric's startup. The transfers, totaling $20,000, were flagged by the bank as suspicious, triggering an internal audit at Sophia's company. Jake's forged signatures were on the documents, but Sarah found a digital trail, IP addresses, login times, proving the activity came from Sophia's devices. The evidence was ironclad. Jake wasn't the perpetrator. He was the victim. As the audit deepened, Jake prepared for the next step, turning the evidence over to the police and the company's investigators. It was a risk. Sophia could lash out, spin lies, but Jake was ready. He wasn't the naive husband anymore, blindsided by a smile. He was a man with a plan, a man who'd learned that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt, but only on his terms. The rain outside slowed to a patter, and for the first time in weeks, Jake felt a flicker of hope. The bug in his life was exposed. Now it was time to fix it. The Portland spring was tentative, the rain giving way to patches of sun that dappled the city's streets. For Jake Thompson, 35, the light felt like a metaphor. After months of unraveling his 12-year marriage to Sophia, the software engineer had clawed his way out of betrayal shadow. The photo of Sophia in Eric's arms, the $20,000 stolen from their joint account, the forged signatures tying him to her company's fraud, it had all nearly broken him. But Jake, ever the problem solver, had fought back with logic and resolve, turning evidence over to investigators and reclaiming his life. Now, as April bloomed, he stood on the cusp of closure, ready to let go of the past and step into a future he could shape. Jake had moved out of the dingy motel, trading neon buzz for a small apartment in Mount Tabor with a view of the city skyline. The space was sparse, a couch, a desk, a bed, but it was his. Max, their Labrador, was back by his side, sprawled across the rug, tail thumping. Jake's old life in the Laurelhurst bungalow felt like a story told by someone else, each memory tainted by Sophia's lies. The investigation into her company's financial misconduct, led by his lawyer Sarah, had snowballed. Bank records, IP logs, and metadata proved Sophia and Eric had siphoned funds, using Jake's forged digital signature as a shield. The audit had exposed their scheme, and the consequences were closing in. Jake's days were a blend of routine and reckoning. At his Pearl District startup, he threw himself into a new project, coding with a focus he hadn't felt in months. Therapy with Dr. Ellis helped him navigate the emotional fallout. "You're not defined by our choices," Dr. Ellis said, his voice steady. "You're defined by what you build next." Those words became Jake's anchor. He wasn't the naive husband anymore, blindsided by a flamin' heart emoji or a hotel receipt. He was a man who'd faced the worst and chosen to rise above it. The legal process moved slowly, but Sarah's updates were steady. By mid-April, the company's investigators had enough to act. Sophia was fired, her name tied to fraudulent transfers totaling over $50,000. Eric, her boss and accomplice, faced similar scrutiny, his polished charm crumbling under the weight of evidence. The police opened a case, and Sarah ensured Jake's name was cleared, his forged signatures proven to be Sophia's doing. The bank reversed the $20,000 in transfers, restoring Jake's account. It wasn't about the money. It was about justice, about rewriting the narrative Sophia had tried to script. The final piece came unexpectedly. Sarah called Jake to a downtown coffee shop, its windows fogged from the lingering chill. "Sophia wants to meet," she said. "She's ready to sign documents, fully exonerating you. No fight, no excuses. You don't have to see her, but it could close this chapter." Jake hesitated. Part of him wanted to walk away, to let Sophia fade into the past. But another part, the part that still remembered their wedding dance, her laugh and better days, needed to face her, to end it on his terms. The meeting was set for a rainy afternoon. Jake arrived early, his stomach knotted, and took a corner table with a view of the street. Sophia walked in at 3 p.m., her chestnut hair shorter, her face drawn. Gone was the confident woman who'd gaslit him with a smile. She looked older, diminished, her eyes red-rimmed. She slid into the seat across from him, clutching a folder. "Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know where to start." He studied her, his anger tempered by exhaustion. "Just say it," he said, his tone even. She swallowed, tears brimming. "I'm sorry. For everything. The lies, the money, Eric. I thought I could control it, keep it separate. But I lost myself." She pushed the folder toward him, documents admitting her fraud, clearing his name. "I used you, and I hate who I became. Eric's gone. He bailed when the audit hit. I've got nothing left." Jake's jaw tightened. He wanted to lash out, to ask why she'd thrown away 12 years for a fling and a scam. But her words, "I've got nothing left," hit harder than he expected. She wasn't the villain he'd imagined, just a flawed person who'd made catastrophic choices. "Why my name?" he asked, his voice low. "Why drag me into it?" Sophia's hand shook. "I thought it'd protect me if things went wrong. I was scared. Stupid. I never meant for you to get hurt." She laughed, a bitter sound. "I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve it." Jake leaned back, the rain tapping the window. He thought of the nights he'd spent replaying her lies, the anonymous email that cracked the case, the therapy sessions that taught him to let go. Forgiveness wasn't about her. It was about freeing himself. "I'm done being angry," he said finally. "I'm moving on. Sign the papers, Sophia. That's all I need." She nodded, tears spilling as she signed, her pen trembling. Jake took the folder, stood, and walked out without looking back. The rain felt cleansing, washing away the last traces of their shared life. He slipped off his wedding ring, tucking it into his pocket, a weight lifted. The divorce was finalized a month later, clean and uncontested. Sophia faced a civil suit from her company, her reputation in tatters. Eric's career imploded, his name blacklisted in Portland's tight-knit tech scene. Jake didn't revel in their downfall. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, delivered through evidence and law, not rage. Jake's new life took root. He launched a side project, a startup app to help people track financial fraud, born from his own scars. It gained traction, earning him a small but growing following on a blog where he shared tips on digital security. He adopted a rescue dog, Rocky, a scruffy mutt who trailed them on Mount Tabor hikes. Max still happy with the neighbor. Friends noticed the change. Jake's laugh was back, his eyes clearer. "You seem lighter," Mike said over beers one night. Jake smiled. "I am." One evening, as the sun set over Portland's skyline, Jake sat on his apartment's balcony, Rocky at his feet. He thought of Sophia, not with anger but with distance, like a chapter he'd closed. The anonymous email sender remained a mystery. Maybe a co-worker, maybe a whistleblower, but it didn't matter. They'd given him the truth, and he'd done the rest. 12 years of love had ended in betrayal, but they'd also taught him resilience, the kind that let him rebuild on his own terms. Jake opened his laptop, drafting a new blog post, "How to Protect Your Finances from the People You Trust Most." It wasn't just advice. It was his story, stripped of pain, shaped into something that could help others. The rain had stopped, and the city glowed under a rare, clear sky. For the first time in years, Jake felt free. Not the naive freedom of his old life, but a hard-won kind, built on truth and choice. Whatever came next, he was ready.